Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Estamos muy felices por estar iniciando esta transmisión, solamente con algunos minutos de retraso. Les pedimos disculpas, pero estábamos ajustando los últimos detalles. Sean todos muy bienvenidos al UXDay 2018, este evento online gratuito que se ha consolidado como un referente para los profesionales que trabajan en áreas de experiencia de usuario, diseño de servicios, arquitectura de información, diseño de interfaz, de profesionales que vienen tanto de España como de todos los países de Latinoamérica. Estamos muy felices y estamos muy agradecidos porque este año hemos superado los 2.400 personas registradas, que hoy día ya hace un rato se comenzaron a identificar para poder entrar al streaming que están viendo en este momento. Estamos muy contentos porque este ha sido un año de mucho esfuerzo, de entender que necesitábamos como dar un paso más allá en este evento y tratar de convocar a más actores que nos permitieran traer miradas frescas, ¿cierto? Respecto de lo que estamos haciendo y cómo estamos proyectando el trabajo que realizamos a diario todos los profesionales que trabajamos en experiencia de usuario. Así que nuevamente estoy muy contento de poder estar aquí con ustedes y tener el privilegio además de estar compartiendo y sentado en este lugar con todos ustedes. Tengo una ayuda acá de memoria que siento que es muy necesario porque es muy importante que agradezcamos algunas cosas de las que hemos tenido. Primero y en primer lugar tenemos que agradecer a todo el equipo de Multiplica que ha estado trabajando para que todo lo que ustedes están viendo ahora sea posible. Todo el equipo de diseño en Chile, el equipo de corporate de Multiplica que está basado en Colombia, particularmente acá el equipo en Chile, a Evelyn, Yerko, Eddie, que han estado trabajando muy duro por hacer que tengamos todo esto funcionando hoy día de la mejor forma posible. Si nos equivocamos nos perdonarán, pero obviamente eso es parte de todo lo que hacemos a diario y de los aprendizajes que tenemos. Además, no tengo que olvidarme de reconocer a los sponsors que nos han estado ayudando esta vez. La gente de MiStream están acá en nuestra oficina en Chile y tenemos un streaming de calidad que lo compartiremos con todos los registrados al final del evento, un video bastante extenso con todas las presentaciones, y esto para las dudas de las personas que me estuvieron escribiendo esta noche muy tarde sobre si íbamos a compartir el video. Sí, lo compartiremos y estará publicado también en nuestras redes. También agradecer a la gente de Rosenfeld Media que nos obsequiaron algunos libros que ya hemos sorteado esta semana con algunas de las personas que se registraron y que hoy sortearemos también 10 libros físicos que enviaremos a los destinatarios que aparezcan sorteados. Más tarde les comentaré de esto. Y también a la gente de UXDay Internacional, quienes también están apoyando este evento y quienes también nos han aportado con 2 pases que también vamos a sortear más adelante en el día, entre las personas que estén viendo el streaming que acabamos de iniciar. Bien, tengo que decir que para poder abrir este evento hoy, nos costó diseñar el programa y darle prioridad a cada uno de los invitados que tenemos, porque la verdad es que tenemos un programa lleno de invitados que son absolutamente importantes y siento yo que son vitales para poder abrir estas conversaciones. Hoy día estamos abriendo este evento con un hito. Para mí, personalmente creo que es un hito, teniendo la posibilidad de tener a LouRosenfeld. Muchos lo conocerán. Lou es autor del libro que es el libro estandarte de la arquitectura de información. Se escribió hace 20 años, Information Architecture, desde la web más allá. Lou francamente es un autor que siempre hemos querido tener. Ha estado una vez en Chile, hace 2006, y yo tuve la suerte de estar con él presencialmente en México en 2007, donde nos conocimos, y bueno, ha sido muy importante seguir su trayectoria y decidimos invitarlo porque nos parecía que de la mano de lo que él ha hecho con Rosenfeld Mía, que es la editorial que hoy día está publicando la mayoría de los libros que todos hoy día leemos, nos parece que es súper relevante entender su mirada respecto de diferentes temas. Lu, cuando lo invitamos, estuvo feliz de participar y inmediatamente dijo que sí, pero nos puso solamente una condición. Él no puede estar hoy día online en vivo porque justamente en este momento él está en medio de su evento anual que se llama Design Ops en la ciudad de Nueva York y como no podía estar disponible para ambos eventos, decidimos grabar una conversación que sostuvimos con él hace solo algunos días y es lo que queremos compartir con ustedes. Y para poder resolver este tema, obviamente lo que hicimos fue invitar a un grande como JuanCamus, que nos acompaña hoy día. Juan Carlos, bienvenido.
Muchas gracias.
Y solamente tengo que decir dos cosas de Juan Carlos. Juan Carlos es un gran amigo, nos conocemos en la vida, yo creo que hace 20 años quizás,
Sí, fácil.
más o menos. Juan Carlos es autor de un libro maravilloso que se llama Tiene 5 segundos y además autor de un libro recientemente lanzado del que quiero que hablemos en un rato más.
Tal cual.
Así que Juan Carlos, muy bienvenido y te quería pedir si brevemente nos puedes ayudar a introducir esta conversación que hemos tenido con Lu, que estoy seguro está lleno de cosas interesantes que vamos a compartir el día de hoy.
Sí, perfecto. Mira, no todos los días uno tiene la oportunidad de conversar con alguien tan importante como él. Casi todos los que conocemos y trabajamos en esta área estudiamos con él y estudiamos del libro que él con Peter Murville desarrollaron ahí en los 90. Son nuestra base, por lo tanto es muy interesante. Queda corto el tiempo, me habría encantado tenerlo más cerca, digamos, para hacerle más preguntas, pero creo que lo que conversamos en el rato que estuvimos ahí, sintetizamos muy bien lo que necesitábamos saber y hablamos un poco del futuro, que es que viene ahora. Sí. Él acaba de sacar una nueva edición del libro del oso polar, donde además está Jorge Arango participando. Y también hablamos de una cuestión que para nosotros acá en Chile, desde nuestra mirada, es bien interesante, que es cómo metes a la industria, cómo la haces crecer, cómo haces madurar. Creo que ambos elementos son de mucho interés y espero que a todos les guste las preguntas que hicimos y esta conversación.
Perfecto. Yo solamente agregar, para que vayamos a ver el video, que Lu, muy entusiasmado además en la conversación que tuvimos, que la tuvo contigo Juan Carlos, de hecho, es que él nos manifestó su interés de volver a repetirse el plato. Y eso también nos propone un desafío súper importante.
Sí, sí, tenemos que crecer como industria. Sí. Sabemos que estamos muy lejos. Nosotros estamos a 8 o 10 horas de las personas que consideramos nuestros referentes en la profesión. Es caro hacerlos venir, es caro producir todas estas cosas, pero de alguna manera tenemos que inventar la forma de desarrollarlo.
De todas maneras, eventos como este, y eso es súper relevante, ayudan a que eso ocurra. Nos ponen mucho más cerca. Más tarde vamos a tener a Jorge Arango. Estoy seguro que Lu, si no hubiese tenido Design Ops hoy, estaría hoy día conectado desde su oficina teniendo esta conversación. Este evento se está desarrollando en paralelo y se está transmitiendo para diferentes países y los usos horarios son distintos. Estamos partiendo a las 7 de la mañana en San Francisco, en California. Y estamos casi al final de la tarde en España. Entonces, esto supone un esfuerzo que es mayor, pero es posible. Así que, bueno, los invito a todos a que veamos. Les recuerdo que el hashtag de este evento es UXDay, gato, UXDay 2018.
Numeral.
Claro, hashtag o numeral UXDay 2018. Gracias, Juan Carlos.
Los gatos son
lenguaje
chilenos.
Neutro y muy importante.
Los gatos son chilenos, acuérdate.
Y comenten en redes sociales utilizando este hashtag para que podamos recibir sus comentarios, idealmente sus preguntas, y va a ser la dinámica que vamos a tener hoy día durante todo el día. ¿Vale?
Perfecto.
Vamos con el video entonces, por favor. Gracias.
Okay, just for warming up, we can say we're celebrating many anniversaries this year because it's the 20th anniversary of the Polar Bear book, and also I discovered that this is the year with the 10th anniversary of the Rosenfeld media.
Yes, well, 12. Wait, What are we up to?
Yes,
October 2000.
Because the first book was in 2008.
Yeah, we started before then. We started, but that's okay.
Okay, so for us, the Polar Bear book means a lot because we almost everybody learn how to do what we did according to that book. We in those pages we learned a lot, and for us make a big difference according what we were doing. You put the name for many things. So for us, it's important to know what it means today to you, that book, and if still stand the first edition, or you need to move to the new editions. That is the question.
You know, I mean, the first edition is interesting historically, but the fourth edition is important because it really has taken a step in a direction that Peter Morville and I didn't. In other words, the fourth edition had Jorge Arango as a co-author, and Jorge had a very different background as an architect from Peter and I, who were librarians. And Jorge has brought the Richard Saul Werman view of information architecture as about understanding as well as finding. And so by bringing in his perspective, we were able to merge them in one book. And the book also talks about things that are beyond the web. That's the new subtitle, for the web and beyond. And so I think the fourth edition is, if I was going to recommend anyone look at the book, I would say, please look at the fourth edition. If you really care about the evolution of information architecture, at least according to Morville and me, look at the old editions, but the fourth edition is far more important.
Okay, so as you say, we can see today more things than just the information. The context, for example, in the last book, something very important. And we have this idea that we are getting more tools for doing things. We are talking about, for example, voice commands for everything. We need a new kind of information architecture for that, a new experience on that. So there always will be appearing these new things. Do you think that we need to jump on that, or just wait and see how they develop before to do something?
Oh, we need to do both, really. We need to jump on things that are going to require the help of information architects right away, because we often know that people, product teams, for example, will need our help before they do. And it'd be nice if in certain situations we can help them avoid certain mistakes. But in a new area, like let's say voice interfaces, well, it's new, and so we don't exactly know what to do ourselves just yet. But we have to own the making mistakes so that people can learn how information should be structured in these new contexts. That's our job. We own the mistakes, and ultimately those mistakes lead to useful knowledge. I don't see why we wouldn't jump on those opportunities. And, you know, there's also, with every new opportunity like voice interfaces, we tend to think very narrowly. We think about that specific tool, that specific technology or application, and that's great. But what about how that ties into the broader ecosystem of people interacting with information and having experiences? That has to be, those things have to be integrated. And that's also something that information architecture can really help with. So we have to look at understanding the new technology, making it faster for us to be able to take advantage of it, make mistakes along the way, own those mistakes when it comes to how information should be structured, but also, again, to make sure we're tying the information space that was created by that new technology into the broader information ecosystem that people actually interact with.
Okay, so in that case, we need to learn all the time. That's the need, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, let's not forget that it's fun, right? I mean, we want to do things that are really interesting like anyone else. I know that at a certain point, I got really bored of working on the information architecture of websites.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize it. I thought I just wasn't interested in information architecture very much anymore. And then I realized that that wasn't really true. I might have been bored with websites, but I'd been working on the information architecture of books and the information architecture of conferences and the information architecture of other things as well that I didn't even realize I was still doing information architecture. And, you know, and those things were quite enjoyable. And they really forced me to think about the principles that I found useful as an information architect, to reevaluate them to see if they still worked in these different channels and media. And, you know, that's how you keep your knowledge alive. If you're only pointing yourself at one medium, like the website, if you don't get bored very quickly, you'll certainly get stale.
Okay, so can we say that the web is fading out and we are just getting these new technologies? I mean, for example, many people is looking just to social networks to get informed. The web is like a backup, if you want. Nobody's looking at that. So is the web dying?
No, I don't think it's dying. I mean, I think it's certainly under stress. Social networks are certainly creating a lot of problems, but they are walled gardens. And I'm not sure that the world is quite ready to give everything of how they use and consume information over to Mark Zuckerberg. You know, I don't know, as a business person, I find myself doing more and more web work. I don't see how we get around it. It doesn't mean we're not also having to invest heavily into social media, but I think, again, these things have to be integrated, and that's the big challenge. But no, I really don't see how, I mean, if the web was really sick and the web was really dying, I think you would see Google dying at the same time, right? Because Google is now the primary tool used to access the resources of the web. I don't know. Last time I looked, their stock price was pretty good.
Okay, but what would be the challenges now for the web to get more easy? No, it's not that, or it is.
And I think it's an issue of scale and integration. So you have more people, you have more websites, you have more content on those websites. The content suffers from rot, you know, the redundant, outdated, and trivial syndrome, where content may be good today and it's no good in a month, but it still stays around and interferes with the user's experience. And then there's the integration of all those things with other channels and other media, like social media, as you're saying, like all the various pieces of new technologies, like the Alexa. I mean, these things have to work together. They're part of a broader ecosystem. And one of the things I mean, I'm biased here, but I really like about one of the last books we published. It was by Jorge Arango, whom I mentioned before. He was one of the co-authors of the 4th edition of the Polar Bear book. Jorge's book, Living in Information, is really talking about this, that we're actually designing a new kind of place. Well, that kind of place is already growing up around us through the efforts of many people who work in technology and work in design. But those places are real places. And if you look at them as places, the place being the bank, but also the bank's web environment and the bank's mobile app and all the other things that come together to create the experience around, let's say, a bank, this is a complicated area, and there's a lot of cracks through which we can fall, both as users and as designers. And a lot of those cracks are ethical. There's a lot of things that are being abused when we don't think about the ethical impacts of the work we do in these spaces. So I really encourage people to stop thinking so much about the individual technology, the individual medium like the web versus social media versus whatever, and start thinking about how those things all fit together as a big place in which we live. We're not just working, we're not just being entertained, but we actually live in these places. And that metaphor is very useful as a way to kind of understand what we've done, what we've brought on ourselves, and maybe what we can do about it.
Okay, so you say that we have as professionals a goal, which is to deal with the whole technology with looking for something, and that something is what the final customer needs at the end, right? It's not
sometimes. I don't know if I mean that's a good model, although finding is still not necessarily what people are trying to do. I mean, I think more and more they're trying to just experience, and that can mean finding, but it can mean other things as well.
But when you say we work in the information architecture, it appears that you are just working with a piece of contents put together and put in a well place to be easy to use, and the experience is below that. Is that doesn't appear?
I mean, yeah, that's fine. You can be working with a piece of content. You can also be working or sort of treating an entire information system, in effect, as a piece of content, and that you are trying to put together with other similarly large systems. So I don't know. It depends on whether you want to work at a micro level or a macro level. I think there's a lot of beauty and even poetry in the micro level, where you're working, let's say, on developing a content model.
I want to talk with you about new techniques and methodologies or something like that. Yeah. So after the what we learned about information architecture in the 90s, began to appear a lot of new methodologies regarding to contents, like, for example, content strategy and many things like that. So, do you think that they need to be mixed with the information architecture, or they are going in different ways?
Yes and yes. So one of the things that I've finally learned after being in the field for 25 or 30 years is that no one discipline has a monopoly on the truth. No one method for understanding users or customers is perfect. No one person can really understand an experience, and much less design for it. And I'm always coming back to the fable of the blind man and the elephant. Do you know that fable?
And yeah.
Should I? I'll run through it very quickly, just in case people listening don't. The blind men, there's a few blind men, they're out for a walk together in the jungle without a guide. I don't know why. It's a very bad idea. But there they are, they're in the jungle. And they come across an elephant, but of course they don't know what it is. And one of them touches the trunk of the elephant and says, "I think I found a snake." The other one is touching the arm or the leg of the elephant and says, "No, no, no, it's the trunk of a tree." And so on. And until the blind men talk, they really cannot achieve insight. They don't know that they've stumbled upon an elephant. And I feel very strongly that that's the situation we are in, those of us who are involved in any aspect of customer or user experience. We don't know. We don't know. We can only know more when we work together with people who know the truth in a different way. And so I'm very excited right now because actually just today I've been working on with my co-curators on the Enterprise User Experience Conference program for 2019. And we are working really hard to figure out how our program, our speakers, and our audience can be more than UX people. Who else touches the experience in an enterprise? Well, there are customer experience people, there are engineers, there are marketing people, there are analytics people, there are product people, and on and on and on. They're all important, they all have something to offer. The real challenge is getting them together, creating a structure, and enabling them to have a productive conversation so they can get at the truth. I think one reason that the Polar Bear book, by the way, was successful back in 1998 was not because it was so brilliant. I think we just were timed very well with a shared vocabulary and a shared set of concepts about information challenges that enabled people from different disciplines, developers, graphic designers, usability engineers, librarians, to start having conversations about information and how it should work on websites. And that shared vocabulary is what helped those different blind men see the elephant. And it certainly was true then, and it's only more true today because the world we work in and live in is far more complex than it was in 1998.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, can we say the same for the methodologies for developing things? For example, we are being triggered in many directions because we have the agile method, the UX lean, the whatever. We have the cascade and everything. Can we mix them?
So I don't pretend to be enough of an expert in agile or lean to wade into this swamp of battle and argument and so forth. So I tend to be an agnostic. I'm sure there are settings like, let's say in a startup where a very agile approach makes great sense, and you may not have the resources to have an extensive testing and evaluation program, or the time for that matter. And so in that case, I think designers have to go along with the nature of the product development process that's typical of a startup. If you're working on at a large corporation that creates medical devices, and the customer's life depends on that device working, like a pacemaker, for example, or maybe it's something with a little more of a user interface. You have to do pretty extensive testing that might get in the way of conventional agile, and that's okay. It really does depend. And it depends on the culture and the resources available, as well as the nature of the product being developed.
Okay. And also,
so that's an answer that is probably unsatisfying, but it's the only one I can really give you. It's the only fair answer.
Okay, but I want to go further because taking what you were doing, you are now organizing the second version of the Design Ops Summit, which means for me, because I was just reading the website, that you are working on the organization, on the team, not on the, because at the beginning we were working on the products. We were focused on making a good product. But then you realize that it's not enough. You need to change the company. Is that the message?
So the company being my company, or the companies that are sending people to the conferences?
The second one.
Okay. Well, I think you know, it's interesting, the parallels between information architecture and design ops, because the term design ops, I heard for the first time maybe in March of 2017, and by November of 2017, we had a sold-out conference on the topic that quickly. And this year, the conference is it's 3 weeks from now, and we're going to have more than double the people as last year. And there's a lot of excitement because the term captures people's imagination and it encodes with some common vocabulary and concepts, something that they had already been doing but didn't have a name for it. So, you know, you know, clearly it's already been happening. Clearly there's a lot of interest and excitement in it. And I think partly it's because we need to be collectively or communally aware of the fact that design doesn't just happen in large organizations. It needs an infrastructure of tools, an infrastructure of roles and people and policies to help the people who actually are doing research and design do their work more efficiently and more impactfully. And that's, to me, what design ops is about. It's a simple maturation of the fact that we're not really too concerned about will design or UX get established in large organizations any longer. Now we're concerned with making it more effective and more cost efficient in those organizations and better run. And that's what it's really about. So it's a predictable trend based on the maturation of UX in large organizations.
Okay, and also you have also the Rosenfeld Media Company making those beautiful books. It's like that you are trying by all means to put things into the environment to make it change. You want to do that part of the job for making the life easy for us, for example?
Yes, absolutely. You know, one of my heroes is Tim O'Reilly from O'Reilly Media. And when I was starting the company, he said to me, "Oh, you're going to be a publisher. Well, you know that most publishers are frustrated authors." And he's absolutely right. I kind of got frustrated with writing books and doing them for someone else and doing consulting for other people. And I just kind of wanted to do something that I could really grow and try new things out and also have a tangible product, whether that's a book or now the experience of a conference. And that's what I really enjoy doing. I don't really want to be a specialist in any aspect of user experience any longer or an expert in any particular method or methodology. I just really like being part of the community. I like seeing the community grow. I like the fact that there are so many smart people that are also people with heart. And it's just nice to help enable that those people to be more successful, to find each other and to do great things together. So I have the best job in the world, absolutely.
That's beautiful. I have listened many conferences that you have gave and your podcasts. In many times you refer yourself like making like a mission, like you are a missionary trying to convert people into something. You have like a role to play here, which is to make this thing, put together many things, an industry, people, many things. In that way, have you feel that the environment where we are working on has really changed in these 20 years?
No, not really. There's always new people in the environment who have to learn fundamental things and need mentoring and need help. There's always new things to learn, new media, new technologies that just constantly are driving change. And that's what's really exciting, but it means that we have to support each other. We can't really learn everything on our own. And I love the role of what I would call actually a band leader. I like to pull the band together. I like to get the Design Ops Conference band together, you know, this year, and the Enterprise UX one together next year, and the books and all this sort of thing requires getting people together and pointing them in the same direction and getting them excited about it. And so maybe, you know, I mean, that was what I was doing 20 years ago. I just didn't realize it. And I see lots of people like myself over that 20 or 25 years who really haven't changed. They're doing the same types of things. I think we just become more aware of our roles over time and what we're good at and what our strengths are. So, you know, I also, you know, we talked about scale a little earlier. I mean, there's just, everything is happening at a larger scale. There's just so many more people doing this type of work. And that means we can all specialize a bit more. And that's really exciting as well, right? So instead of organizing a community around a broad topic, like let's say information architecture or interaction design, now we can organize a community around what seems to be a really narrow topic, like research operations. That's pretty cool too. So yeah, I don't really, I see the specialization changing, I see the scale changing, I see the number of people involved changing, but ultimately all of us are doing, you know, the same kinds of things that we always did do, only maybe better and more consciously.
Okay. I want to know that because here in Latin America, we are still struggling, trying to convince the upper boss that how things need to be done. How can you change the cultural approach to the things that we do for them to accept our knowledge as something valuable? Because we always are fighting for, say, you have to do this instead of give me the result first and then talk.
I have good news. I have good news. You know, I think, you know, the old saying, the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed. I think it's very true because the nature of the conversation in North America has changed quite a bit. We don't talk about that so much anymore. And it just may be that we have a head start. And so there's a maturation that's come a little sooner in terms of industry's value and respect for user experience design. That's not to say that there are a lot of people I talk to in the field here that are still frustrated. They are still frustrated, many of them. And, you know, it's not perfect, but we've come pretty far. And the nature of the conversations have really changed a bit. And I think the same will happen in Latin America. It's just a matter of time. The biggest reason is competition. Most of us work in settings, in businesses and organizations where the ultimate product is a commodity. So you could say that, you know, that certainly if you're in banking, the banking services are not really that different than other bank services. If you're in insurance, it's true as well. You might even argue that's true for education and certainly for consumer products. The manufacture of any of those products and services is becoming incredibly powerful and inexpensive. What happens when everything is a commodity is that you have to differentiate yourself from your competitors through service, through experience. And that's what we're seeing here. So as an example, one of the largest banks in the US is Capital One. It's actually a medium-sized bank, but it's becoming very successful because they have invested heavily in building a user experience capacity inside their organization. They've hired some of the best people. And now we're starting to see other banks feeling the pressure. Chase Manhattan and Citibank and so on are responding, and they're late and they know it, and they finally are realizing they have to catch up. And you see that happen in just about every industry, and I think the same will happen organically in Latin America. How can you make that happen? I have to say, it's not the best answer, but it's patience. It's just going to happen. It's just, you may not really, you have to be ready for it. You have to encourage it. You might want to learn a little bit about organizational change and come to conferences where it's covered, read books on it and so forth. But ultimately, you're probably not going to drive it. You're probably going to support it. It's going to happen organically.
Okay, so do you think that seminars and books and make a community together play the role in the case of US?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the use case for enterprise UX, just as from my own experience, I'm not saying we're the only ones who covered this, but Enterprise UX Conference, the use case was 5 years ago for leaders and managers of UX teams to get their teams established and protect them so that they could take root. And now the use case has changed completely. The use case is really, how do I educate my people so that they can succeed in the enterprise because they may have very basic skills? And how do I align and collaborate with my peers at other parts of the enterprise that have something to do with user experience, the developers, the product managers, the customer experience people? How do we work together? That's very different than it was just 5 years ago. And I see that just through the lens of one conference. The same thing has been happening in other conferences and other communities and so forth.
Okay, and looking at that, what would be your advice for us here in Latin America in that way?
Organize. So I'm so glad you're getting together for UXDay. I mean, what a wonderful thing to do. But, you know, and this is actually, this is advice for conference organizers, but it's also advice for everyone in your communities. Conferences are great, but they happen typically once a year. I do two myself. And I know that there's, you know, almost 365 other days a year that nothing's happening around that community. It goes dormant. It may even become defunct. What I think is really sad is to put all that energy in getting people together and then let it just go, let it die. What I really think is important for people who organize events and people who care about events is to have continued conversation in between annual events. And so one of the things I found really useful for design ops and enterprise UX conferences is I've started doing free calls on Zoom like we're doing right now for people who are interested in those topics. And I publicize these calls after the conferences and encourage people to keep the conversation going. And that's been really powerful. And I get 80 people a few times a month just to sit in on a call, and we have guest speakers. It's very informal. Like I said, I don't charge anyone for it. I just use Zoom, and I know people, and I tell them, and then they tell their friends, and so forth. It's really not that hard. It's really not that expensive to keep a conversation going. And if you think of it this way, you shouldn't think about the conference first. You should think about the conversation first. The conference is just like a very organized, well-designed, coordinated, polished version of a community's conversation. And so are the get-togethers that might happen every month in a very informal way, virtually or in person. So are the mailing lists. So are all the other channels that these things can happen in. And all these channels are inexpensive or free. There's no, you know, social media are another outlet for these types of conversations. There's no reason we cannot continue these conversations between annual conferences. So I hope you guys are thinking about something like that, and that I didn't put you on the spot too much just now.
Okay, so make the community grow should be the motto? Something like that?
No, it would be make it possible for the community to have a conversation.
Okay.
It's all about the conversation. Conversation isn't always professional. The conversation may be, oh, I'm so frustrated with my boss. What do I do? And somebody else says, yes, I feel the same way, and here's what I did. That's, that's really important.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Last question is, how do you think we are going to? What the futures deserve to us?
I think the future is going to look just like the past, except faster and larger. I mean, basically, we are people who make sense of technology, and we humanize technology, whether we're information architects or interaction designers, service designers, usability people, content strategists, whatever. We make sense of technology and humanize it. The next 20 years are going to make the last 20 years look like the Stone Age when it comes to technology. And we need more and more people to make sense of the world we're creating and to humanize it. And that's going to always be a challenge of getting the blind men together to understand the elephant. It's always going to require conversations that happen across disciplines, that require shared vocabularies, a shared set of common concepts, just ways of getting our brains collectively to look at difficult problems. That's what's going to always be true for our field. We always will be a bunch of synthesists who are trying to work out difficult problems. And if you've gotten this far and you're still a part of the field, I think you're in a pretty good place to survive the next 20 years. But just make sure to catch your breath and maybe learn to meditate once a day. That might not be a bad idea either, because it's going to go really fast and it's going to be pretty stressful.
Okay, thanks a lot. Has been a very good time. Thanks for your time and your effort to our case.
Thank you. It's so much fun, and I'm really glad to get an opportunity to talk with you and to be part of the event.
Thank you.
Me parece fantástico. Como siento que es demasiado maravilloso poder escuchar a Lu y como toda esta dimensión que nos comparte y que definitivamente nos propone como varios desafíos. Todo el rollo de cómo él piensa las comunidades. Yo he tenido la suerte de participar en las reuniones que él convoca mensualmente, son fantásticas porque además hay una posibilidad, una agenda que los participantes pueden ir proponiendo y eso es fantástico. Me quedo con también este gran desafío que habla respecto de la madurez de las compañías. Cuando realmente uno piensa que mirando hacia el norte y hacia el mercado de Estados Unidos, también en Europa, uno pensaría que la madurez está como muy por sobre lo que tenemos en Latinoamérica y no es tan así.
Tal cual, ellos yo creo hicieron o están haciendo el mismo camino que estamos haciendo acá. Llegaron probablemente antes porque partieron antes, pero lo que yo recojo de este rato de conversación con Lu es su optimismo. Él cree efectivamente que las cosas van a pasar, que van a caer de madura sí o sí. Así que eso me dejó muy tranquilo.
Bueno, eso es fantástico. De hecho, una gran propuesta para incluso este mismo evento que lo hemos organizando año a año. Esta es la cuarta vez que lo hacemos y que hemos ido escalando. Y obviamente, claro, yo cuando escucho, convocamos a mucha gente, este evento está convocando 2.500 personas, el streaming lo está viendo alrededor de 700, 800 personas en este momento. Es como fantástico, pero ¿qué hacemos después de eso? Y eso es un gran desafío. Para las comunidades, todas las que aparecen. Está IXDA, ISA la próxima semana,
claro.
En Río. Pasan muchas cosas y es bueno que conectemos todo eso. Y quizás estas iniciativas, que quizás son de un costo que es inferior, nos pueden permitir como una buena plataforma para poder hacer esto y conversar.
Sí, tal cual. Yo creo que uno tiene que conectarse, eso es necesario, y para eso es súper relevante que pasen cosas.
Oye, Juan Carlos, bueno, ha sido fantástico, estamos como justo en el tiempo además de nuestro programa, siguiendo con el programa, pero yo no quería que termináramos esto sin hablar de esto. 100 elementos que debe tener un sitio web,
Sí, un título largo.
Yo ya lo tengo en digital, pero es fantástico verlo en papel.
Sí, y ahora esta copia es para ti. No, de verdad, si es regalo.
Gracias.
Luego te lo firmo.
Por fin tengo mi libro firmado por Juan Carlos, bueno, es el segundo.
Sí, claro que sí.
Para mí es fantástico tenerte aquí, porque independiente de que nos conocemos hace mucho tiempo, tú has sido un fiel impulsor de que la gente escriba, y no hay mejor manera de hacerlo en que uno documente su historia escribiendo libros.
Tal cual.
Tuve una primera experiencia hace mucho tiempo con la guía web.
Así fue.
Algunos de quienes nos ven conocen de esa historia. Luego publicaste Tienes 5 segundos.
2009.
2009, una maravilla respecto a un modelo de cómo escribir para la web,
claro,
el contexto digital. Y ahora estamos con 100 elementos que debe tener un sitio web. Y nada, pues te quería invitar. Yo sé, hace poco tuviste igual un webinar con la gente de UXDay Viña,
claro que sí.
Presentamos
en Santiago y después presentamos en Viña.
Y
claro,
hay un prólogo muy bonito de UXDay Chile, ¿verdad?
Sí. Los chiquillos son muy cariñosos.
No tenemos mucho tiempo para hablar de los 100 elementos.
Por supuesto.
Pero quizás sí podemos hablar de los 3 que son más relevantes, ¿no?
Sí, una de las preguntas habituales con este libro es ¿cuáles son cuáles deberían ser los principales, digamos? Ya si tú pudieras hacer un listado de los 10 mejores o de ese tipo. Mira, mi respuesta que he ido desarrollando con el tiempo tiene que ver con una cuestión bien simple, que es que nosotros hacemos y diseñamos experiencias de uso. Lo que nosotros buscamos es que los productos digitales que estamos entregando cumplan con la tarea que uno quiere que se desarrolle a través de ellos. Por lo tanto, la respuesta a cuál es el elemento principal es aquel elemento que permite cumplir la tarea. Entonces, lo que hay acá es un checklist largo, 100 cosas. La idea es que tú tomes el índice y digas, lo tengo, este no lo tengo, y la pregunta es ¿por qué no lo tengo? ¿Y para qué me sirve? Entonces, mira, abre las páginas y tú podés ver que cada uno de los elementos tiene una descripción, todo breve, y tiene ejemplos. Todos los ejemplos son positivos. En el sentido, claro, son positivos en el sentido de tú ves eso y te dice así es, no así no es. De esa manera, nosotros tenemos, por ejemplo, acá los ejemplos, en el lado de acá nosotros tenemos de qué se trata y cómo se hace. Y en la zona de acá, grados de dificultad y cosas de ese tipo. Claro que sí. Además, si lo compran en papel, está en Amazon, y sorry por el comercial, pero si lo compran en papel se van a dar cuenta que es un libro grande, ya es un libro casi de tamaño carta.
Ajá.
Y porque la idea es que se abra y quede abierto en el escritorio. Este es un libro para... No es una novela.
Libro de trabajo.
Es un libro de trabajo,
por
como
supuesto.
Los que hemos hecho. La guía fue un ejemplo de eso. Son libros que tú los ponís y quedan ahí. Y tú los puedes rayar, por eso tiene harto espacio en blanco, etcétera. Y este es un libro que de alguna manera representa mi selección personal de 100 elementos. Lo que yo quiero es que a partir de la gente que lo use para trabajar y sea un buen argumento para presentar qué se puede hacer con este tipo de elementos en los proyectos con los que nosotros estamos trabajando. Así que es un libro hecho para esta comunidad.
Súper. Yo no quería dejar de preguntarte esto, y esto sí que no estaba preparado porque estuvimos conversando harto sobre esto. Pero cuando hablamos de 100 elementos que debe tener un sitio web, y claro, hay elementos de navegación, temas de landing, pero esto es totalmente homologable a la experiencia en otros contextos, móviles, por ejemplo.
Sí, no, por supuesto. Mira, como son 100 cosas, son 10 capítulos, 10 áreas. No son 10 en cada una, sino que hay más de una y más de otra. Les recomiendo todo el capítulo 10. El capítulo 10 es todo lo administrativo. Por ejemplo, paga tu dominio para que no te lo quiten, cosas de ese tipo. Pero hay otras cuestiones que tienen que ver con chequeo de móviles, chequeo de optimización, de velocidad, en fin. Sí. Cubro un montón de áreas que todos van a encontrar que son como... O sea, una vez que lo leas, tú vas a decir, todo esto es obvio. Sí. El tema es que es tan obvio que dejamos de verlo.
Bueno, muchas veces ocurre que esto nosotros como en el día a día hablamos de los grandes problemas higiénicos que tiene un sitio web.
Tal cual.
Y eso es algo que lo que venimos lidiando hace muchos años. Yo te diría, desde que nos conocemos, hemos visto formularios de correo en sitios web que el correo no le llega a nadie. Entonces
Sí,
no te preocupaste de habilitar un correo para recibir algo. Entonces,
sí, y está en varios elementos. Ustedes se van a dar cuenta que, por ejemplo, el sitio web, una vez que parte, en realidad es donde comienza la historia. Para nosotros es donde termina el proyecto, pero en realidad para la empresa que lo encargó es donde parte todo. Y hay todo un área administrativa en la que nosotros deberíamos meternos, trabajar y preparar a la empresa que va a recibir esta herramienta. Así que ese es un poco el objetivo. ¿Vale?
Súper. Muchas gracias, Juan Carlos.
A ti fue un placer. Gracias por la oportunidad de poder hablar con Lu.
Por favor.
Mi primera entrevista real en inglés quedó grabada, así que la vergüenza está ahí permanentemente.
Ajá.
Así que espero les haya gustado a todos.
Buenísimo. Pues muchas gracias, Juan Carlos.